Good afternoon to all of you. Look, it would be really presumptuous on my part to try your patience at this stage of our conversations at the end of 2 days of extraordinary, discussion and discourse on a large number of issues. But it is by way of my duty as the Think20 chair that I stand before you and attempt to say a few words. Firstly, I want to thank all the participants from around the world who took time out from their own busy schedules to come all the way to Mysuru and be with us. And above all, to have supported us throughout the past 8 to 9 months. A number of events were held, and by now I know I've made such a large number of new friends as well. I want to thank the members of the International Advisory Board who have also supported us throughout our work. I want to thank the members of the task forces who have actually done all the heavy lifting. So please give them a round of applause as well. I want to thank Dr. Samir Saran and his entire crew, the G20 Secretariat, for doing an outstanding job. I'll be remiss if I didn't mention that I want to thank other members of the core group of Think20 India. So that includes Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi and his colleagues as well. The G20 Secretariat, very important structure that was created by the Government of India, and it's represented here this evening by Ambassador Muktesh Pardesi. So through you, Muktesh, I want to thank the G20 Secretariat and the Government of India, the Ministry of External Affairs, the External Affairs Minister, the Sherpa as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, over the past 2 days, we've had, as I said before, very rich discussions, a kind of rich harvest in my view. It's not quite over. The last ball, as we say in cricket, has not yet been played. Though this was a T20 group, in my view, and for those of you who don't know what T20 means in cricket, it's the shorter version of the game. I can assure you that we don't intend it to be the short version of the game. For us, it's like a test match. It has to continue beyond the Indian presidency as well. So please keep that in mind. We have successfully published, as Dr. Saran had pointed out, hundreds of policy papers, too numerous to be recounted individually. The task forces, as you've seen today, have successfully come up with and launched their own communiques. Many side events were also held in Mysuru. The first one that I attended was the conversation between Task Force 3 and Task Force 6. There was also a conversation between T20 and T7 in the Bellagio format. And I think all these conversations, plus the ones that you would have had outside of my knowledge, these are very important, and we must value their content, your commitment to these dialogues, and the fact that we should continue with such conversations. Now, you'll all agree that G20 is the most diverse and representative group that exists today, and the need of the hour is to ensure that we continue to work together as a team, bring about greater cohesion and cooperation, and above all, fundamentally, to ensure that its focus remains, whether now or in the future, on key developmental issues. And this was also underscored by the minister yesterday. I also feel that multilateralism, which has been discussed today as well, as represented by the UN, as we all know, is dysfunctional. And I do feel that the G20 is providing a new opportunity for the world to come together, to actually create a new kind of multilateralism, in which we are all equal, in which we do not keep others out of the G20 conversation, one that actually still can hold out hope for us and for the future of humanity. For me, it's not an either-or issue, so it's not a question of the G20 trying to usurp the role of the formal UN structures, but nor should it be a case of the United Nations or the UN Security Council in particular trying to usurp the role of the G20. So we have to be mindful of the fact that just as, at least for a year or more, the UN and the League of Nations, which sank without a trace in 1946, actually coexisted. In this case, we want to ensure that the G20 that does not sink. Anything else may sink, but the G20 must continue to ride the storm and coexist with UN structures, not to condemn them, not to confront them, but to actually try and seek better reform. Both can coexist, in my view. It is not my intention to summarize anything, as I said at the beginning, but it's important to acknowledge the contribution of the think tank community, the research community, those that have also come in from other spaces, vital spaces, like those that study societal issues and well-being and ethics. It's the first time that we brought this kind of an eclectic crowd together. And I think it's actually enriched our discourse and conversation. I acknowledge your contributions, but I urge the think tank community to keep up the pressure. We must keep up the pressure on G20 governments in particular, and to do so in a credible manner will require that we ensure that the conversations that we have in India or in future in Brazil and South Africa, that these conversations are representative. If they are not representative enough, they will not be credible. And if they're not credible, we will not be able to bring about the required pressure on governments to take note of what we are saying. So I think you will agree that in India, we have succeeded in doing this. We have people from all over the world. The conversations have covered virtually every theme and everyone in that spectrum across the world. So continuity in our efforts is very important. The question really is, how do we do it? What kind of continuity? How do we ensure that the experience of India, for instance, which I've heard is greatly valued by people, is also in its own way acceptable manner at the comfort level that suits the next presidency, that we pass this on in an appropriate manner. We can leave it to every presidency to devise and shape and curate their own structures, as we've just heard from colleagues from Brazil. But it would be a shame to let the efforts of this G20 presidency go in vain. And that really means allowing your hard work, your contributions to go in vain. So therefore, I urge each one of you to think about structures. This morning we heard Dr. Samir Saran and Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi briefly introduce to you the idea of the G20 Global Research Forum that was effectively proposed and launched by them. The final contours, I understand, are not yet in place, and it would be extremely useful for Dr. Samir and the Secretariat to actually reach out to you and seek your views further on how we might give some shape to this structure so that it can provide some continuity as well. The whole idea, as he had said, was to conduct research, to also use the convening power that we have in India to organize events and seminars, and to provide the necessary inputs to the next presidency for their own consideration at the comfort level at which they wish to accept them. I hope we can therefore work out a structure that's fit for purpose. And it is time also now, over the next few months, to hand over to Brazil the baton of the Think 20. Now, finally, I feel that the success of the G20 process will depend essentially on two very simple and fundamental things. One, the amount of interest that G20 governments themselves take in addressing key issues on which we have spent a great deal of time. Some take greater interest, some take lesser interest. And so again, it'll, devolve on you to put that pressure and get them to think about these issues. The kind of pressure that the think tank community can generate on their own governments to contribute more to the G20 process will be one of the keys to future success. In this fractured world, by the way, don't worry too much about think tankers not being heard and being frustrated. Even governments are not really heard. Many of the governments themselves are quite helpless in addressing their own issues. So as think tankers, I think we can roll with the punches. And on the mezzanine floor, I saw that golden man, with a hat in that position. Many of you know what that means. Keep walking. Keep walking. I wish you all good health and success in all your endeavors until we meet again. Over to you, Dr. Saran. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chinoy and Ambassador Chinoy. Actually, you are elevated. Okay. No. Look, this is a poignant moment for a number of reasons. First of all, that I hope that I'm able to maintain my 5 phone calls a day to Ambassador Chinoy. The Secretariat function allowed me to have a lot of conversations with him. And I hope we can find new reasons to continue our conversation. So I think our relationship is going to go through a transition and we have to make sure we come out stronger. So I want all of us to applaud Dr. Chinoy, Ambassador Chinoy, for his wonderful contributions. Of course, he has already thanked the G20 Secretariat and Secretary Pardeshi. Thank you so much for your support. Alongside the MEA, I would also like to acknowledge, and here I think we should stand up and applaud the government of Karnataka, who has hosted us over the last 3 days and have really opened their hearts and their doors. We had the additional Chief Secretary with us a little while ago. Some of his team members are here, so thank you very much. Please convey our greetings as well as our thank yous to Karnataka government for this effort. Silently, but in a very strong manner, a few organizations, without being overtly in your face or on the stage, have supported our presidencies. We were able to host you multiple times through the year in multiple locations. We were able to raise the resources, courtesy very strong support from the Asian Development Bank, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. All 3 of them, as you can see, have been rather under the radar, but have been very generous in ensuring, along with the Ministry of External Affairs, and if I would dare say, the Observer Research Foundation, who is also invested in this process, to put together a kitty and a war chest that events like these demand, to be intensive, inclusive, relentless. Someone said that's Janvi's personality. But if you have to be successful, you have to have the means to do this, and we really should applaud these sponsors, Ministry of External Affairs, ADB, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and of course the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung for their support. We have already thanked the task forces. I started the program by thanking them. Upside Down, the book you wrote, sir. So I propose my vote of thanks on day 0. Also thank the code group, also thank the advisory board. But I think one group deserves a second thanks, and that is the T20 Secretariat. The 32 T20 Secretariat members, I would request them to be revealed on the slide here. These are the wonderful people who have served you. They're standing right there behind in the room. Raise your hands and well done. Well done. They are right there at the behind of the room. I will use this moment to tell you that the show will go on. We have completed the responsibility part of our journey, where we were responsible for providing ideas and inputs to the leaders. And that part that culminates now. Now it's time for us to do 2 things: disseminate these ideas and go back to being researchers. To disseminate the ideas, like I had mentioned, we are going to meet in New York during the UNGA week. Lots of events are planned. There are at least 5 or 6 task forces which are directly implicated, and the seventh one is also in part going to contribute to the discussions there. So any of you who happens to be in town, please do write to us, and we will connect you to the opportunities that abound during that week through this network. If you have your own connections and information on certain other events that are taking place, do let the Secretariat know so that we could send out a bulletin to everyone. And we are happy to be the clearing desk of connecting people to opportunities. We will be hosting a pre-COP event in UAE. Again, at least 4 out of the 7 task forces are contributing to that. And if you add multilateralism, those are 5 out of 7 that will have a direct bearing on what we shape in Abu Dhabi or UAE at that particular point of time. So again, those of you who are desirous of contributing and traveling to that part of the world, do reach out to us, and we will find ways of bringing you there and use your talent and your expertise to strengthen the process. As Ambassador Chinoy mentioned, we are hosting on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of November the first inaugural Cape Town Conversations. I have the buy-ins from Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa to host this as the first G20 and Global South Summit. And we hope that on this occasion, barring a few formalities that are still pending, we will be able to actually hand over the T20 Secretariat to the Brazilian Presidency. And we will use that opportunity to complete this process. We will also make this an annual gathering that is focused on bringing voices from the others into the mainstream of the G20 thinking. So this is something that is certainly going to be captured in the institutionalization or the structure that Ambassador Chinoy has requested us to put together on the research forum, the components of research, convenings, and capacity building that we seek to undertake in the days ahead. The second job that now is going to fall on us is to go back to being researchers. We have scribbled some good policy ideas. It's now time to expand them into papers. We have tried to already reach out to some of you and have put together some compendiums, some edited volumes that have been released over the past 3 days. I think at least 7, if I remember correctly, which have been published and released on this occasion. But we are planning at least another 6 that I can inform you today. One is on the African seat at the G20 and arguments and opportunities and indeed the imperatives for that. And we are putting together a compilation with SAIA and other institutions. We want to put this together before the Cape Town Conversations and release it there. We have a whole compendium volume coming out on life and food security. This is something, food, fertilizer, fuel was mentioned a few times during this summit, and that's the second edited volume that we want to put together. Emerging technologies and the Global South is another area that we want to explore. Experiences and expectations from different parts of the world on technology and its implications for their agendas. The 4th volume is on climate change and health. This is a new topic introduced by the COP28 Secretariat, and we want to be able to contribute to that. And we want to get our experts who are on 2 different health streams, SDG and climate, to think about the intersectionality, add gender to it because it's going to be huge. We know that it implicates the weak and the vulnerable and women the most, and we want to bring that element into our research papers. So that's going to be the 4th one. The 5th is going to be on services and digital trade. And we have already received interest in this room from a few who want to take this forward. And finally, we want to come out with a special series on gender with GWL. Maria is here. Along with ORF, we are going to be curating a series on gender, climate, and development. And again, we look forward to your participation. Now, let me leave 2 thoughts with you as we close this program. 1, when you have nothing profound to share or say, which is usually the case when I'm speaking, I turn to Bollywood. I try to see if I can remember some nice dialogues that I can share with you and put them out of context and make them sound nice and profound. So there's one dialogue that has stayed with me for more than a decade, maybe 2 decades. It was from a cheesy, medium grade Hindi film, and it said something that it's important for the world today. In a deeply polarized and divided polity, international community, and indeed national arrangements as well. I remember that line from Bollywood which says, "The heart is on the left, but it is always right." So let us not divide ourselves on left and right. Let us search for the common humanity, which, by the way, abounds in this room. All of you are wonderful people. Some of you may have different perspectives. No one is right, no one is wrong. We are co-travelers. Let's celebrate the diversity, the difference, and let's make it our strength rather than a reason for friction. So thank you very much for the common humanity you have presented before us today. And let's keep this alive and intact in Rio, and let Brazilian rhythms enrich this common humanity. And that's my first thought for you. Since I mentioned Brazil, the different institutions that are going to be in charge in Brazil, and like the Indonesians who held our hands in our early days, we have promised to remain on call anytime they would need us as they settle into taking charge. But I am confident that their academic vigor, and I know all the 3 institutions well, their moves on the floor and off the floor, and certainly the unique location of Brazil, which is, I think, Latin America and a part of the world that remains underexplored in many of our conversations, is going to offer us new cause for focusing on how we can serve all of humanity. But let me warn the Brazilians, that our colleagues, let me warn them, that as I think it was Anna who mentioned it, or maybe someone else, that I think it was maybe someone else as well who mentioned this, that the pop culture meets academic discourse nature of Indian presidency means there are millions of Indians, from maybe 1,000 before the beginning of the presidency to maybe 100 million at the end of the Indian presidency, who today know about the G20. We are coming for you. We are coming to your country, and we are going to celebrate with you. So best of luck, and be ready for a truck full of Indians landing on your shores and talking to you about the G20. Best of luck, and see you later. Thank you.